This series contains adult language and descriptions of graphic violence. Listener discretion is advised. Hi, guys. Welcome to Death by Southwest. Just wanted to jump on here and remind you that we are doing a slightly different format for the next few weeks. The intro and sense of place was published yesterday. So if you didn't listen to that and you want to, it's available. And if you are not into the intro and sense of place and just want to jump right into the crime story, then this is a format that you will probably like, because I'm going to stop talking and we are going to jump right into the story of Jonelle Matthews. And just to remind everyone, this takes place in Greeley, Colorado, where in December 1984, the town was brimming with holiday cheer as residents happily prepared for Christmas. That is, until the disappearance of 12-year-old Jonelle Matthews changed the close-knit community forever and left authorities puzzled for far too long. All right, guys, I will let you jump right into the episode. Hope you enjoy it, and thank you for listening. Our story today focuses on the Matthews family, specifically Jonelle Matthews. And Jonelle Matthews was born at Cottage Hospital in Santa Barbara, California, on February 9th, 1972, to 13-year-old Terry Vieira.
Wow. Can you say that again?
Yes. Jonelle Matthews was born in 1972 to a 13-year-old Terry Vieira. So her mom was 13 when she had her. Oof. Yeah.
Terry, I feel that's a lot. I'm sure, well, I was going to say I'm sure it all turned out okay, but clearly it didn't.
Yes.
But like, wow.
Yeah. 13.
No judgment, Terry. I don't know who the victim is. No judgment. But like, oh my gosh. I know people are young parents, but wowee.
13? I don't know the circumstances surrounding that, but I'm 40 and I can't imagine having a child.
Okay. Well, but you just don't want a child.
Right. But 13, I mean, I think we can all agree that's quite young to have a child. Putting it mildly.
Stating the obvious.
Yes.
Okay. Jonelle was born to 13-year-old Terry.
Yes. And 6 weeks later, in March of 1972, she was adopted by Jim and Gloria Matthews.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that, I don't mean that makes sense. Like Terry shouldn't have kept her, but
it does make sense.
That adds something.
Sure. Jim and Gloria already had one daughter, Jennifer, who was 3 years old at the time, and they had a real struggle to get pregnant with Jennifer. It was hard. They had a lot of fertility issues. So when they decided they wanted to have, another child, they decided adoption would be the better route to go rather than kind of going through the pain of having fertility issues.
And the financials.
Yes.
I don't know if that was a consideration
Sure.
for them. I just hear a lot about
it's very expensive in
gosh
vitro.
darn it. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in 1978, the Matthews moved to Greeley, Colorado. And Gloria soon after got a job at a restaurant, and Jim became principal of Platte Valley Elementary School, which was in a neighboring city, Kersey, Colorado. And I don't know exactly why they moved there. It may have something to do with Jim's job. I think he got the job and that brought them there. They also wanted to raise their kids somewhere different in a smaller town, I believe, than Santa Barbara, which is, I think, where they lived before. So we're going to fast forward to 1984 when our story takes place.
So in 84, Jonelle Matthews was 12?
12, yep. She was
Okay.
12 years old in 7th grade. She was described as being very strong in every sense of the word. She was strong-willed. She was physically strong, emotionally strong. She attended Franklin Middle School, and her and the whole Matthews family were pretty active at Sunnyview Church of the Nazarene. Her mom described her as being very opinionated and really knowing what she wanted. So apparently every birthday, like leading up to her birthday, she would tell her mom in extreme detail what she wanted. Like, I want pink balloons and yellow napkins and the exact birthday that she wanted. And
That's
then
helpful in a way, though, right?
and her mom would try to, honor her wishes. And then the day after that current birthday was over, she'd start planning her next year's birthday.
It sounds like something about when you now get off of a plane from your vacay.
So correct.
Let's think about the next one.
That's so true. She liked celebrations, though. So she wasn't only a fan of birthdays. She was very excited about Christmas every year. And that's when our story takes place. Her dad, Jim, described her as strong-willed. She liked attention. She had lots of friends. He said if Jonelle was in the room, you knew she was in the room. And she was very proud of her Latino background. She was a very lively young lady.
I'm sorry, I'm eating a little snack.
Mm-hmm. That's okay.
But I was just about to write down, did Jonelle know she was adopted? I'm
Yes.
guessing because I don't know, I assumed the Matthews weren't of a Hispanic background.
They are not.
So she did know.
Yeah. Well, the Jim is not. I did see a picture of them.
That's
Jim
true.
is
The wife
not.
could be anything.
Gloria, I don't know her. I don't know her cultural
But did
background.
Jonelle know she was adopted?
She did.
Okay.
Yeah. So Jonelle also loved singing, dancing. She loved performing. At the time, Menudo was her favorite band, and Annie was her favorite musical. She was very close. She had a lot of friends, but her best friend was Deanna Ross, which I think is a really funny choice to name a child.
That's cool.
When you know your last name is Ross, and I mean, it's so close to Diana.
It's probably spelled the same way.
It is not. It is
Oh.
D-E-A.
That's almost cooler. I like that.
Yeah, it's like close. It's very close.
I have a question that you may not know.
Mm-hmm.
They adopted Jonelle at 6 weeks old.
Yes.
Did they adopt her once she had already been named?
Wow, that's a good question. I don't know.
That feels kind of naive of me as I say that. Like, of course she could. Maybe she was. I'm guessing the mother knew she was going to put her up for adoption, so
Yeah.
they don't name her.
Probably. I think
Yeah.
that's probably how
Yeah,
it
yeah.
goes, but I'm not. I honestly don't
Yeah,
totally
I
know.
think that's probably it. Yeah.
In December of 1984, Jonelle's mom, Gloria, was planning to surprise her parents who were aging and maybe not doing so well, lived in California. So her Christmas gift to them was going to be a visit. She was going to fly out there on the 20th, fly back to Colorado on the 26th. And Jonelle was not happy about this because she loved Christmas, and she said to her mom, "What about celebrating Christmas on the 25th?"
Oh, so the mom was going to go visit her parents
And miss Christmas with her own family.
At first, I thought you were saying she was going to fly there and bring her parents back
No,
to
no.
Greeley.
No,
Oh.
going to spend Christmas in California
Oh.
with her parents, come back on the 26th.
Okay.
So Jonelle didn't love that. She was like, "What about you spending Christmas with us?" And Janelle's mom said, "It's only one extra day, and then we'll celebrate Christmas as a family on the 26th. And Jonelle, she said, okay. What was she going to do? She was 12.
Also, as a 12-year-old, I think if you care about Christmas, and I barely care about Christmas
Now.
yeah, or maybe even then, but still, I think like, well, Christmas is on Christmas,
Right.
But now I get like people have things to do. We can celebrate it anytime in December. But as a 12-year-old, Christmas is Christmas if you like Christmas.
And even, I'll be honest, as an adult, if I was told like, we're going to celebrate Christmas on the 26th, I'd be like, no. Like, no. Why?
Well, you need to probably adjust that because you're 40.
Probably I do.
I just had a thought. You might want to cut this, but I just had a thought.
Uh-huh.
So Janelle's mom, tell me her name again.
Gloria.
Goes away for Christmas, 20th through the 26th.
Mm-hmm.
Janelle's left with her dad. Now I want to know about her relationship with her dad, and did her dad do the murdering? I'm closing my eyes to not see your facial reaction.
Great. We're going to move on. But I think that's interesting because I'm sure that people who are listening, well,
Some people may think that.
yeah, or
have
maybe
that
having
thought.
similar questions. And for listeners, I'm probably not going to be able to cut this out. Indiana is outside of the door whining like nonstop. And so I apologize if I can't cut that out. So on the night of December 20th, the Matthews family was spending the evening together waiting for Gloria's ride to the airport. Jennifer and Jonelle were drinking hot cider, which whenever I read hot cider, I really want hot cider. And they were waiting for Gloria's ride to come pick her up and take her to the airport, which it did around 5:45 p.m.
How old was Jennifer? I'm sorry.
3 years older than
So 15.
16.
16. Okay.
Yep. Well, you're right.
Ish. Well, whatever.
Yeah,
It depends on
yeah.
about that age. Yeah.
So Gloria's ride picked her up around 5:45 p.m. And then as soon as she took off, a flurry of kind of activities that evening got underway. Jonelle was performing in a Christmas concert at Intra-West Bank of Denver as a member of Greeley's Franklin Middle School choir. And Jennifer, her sister, had a basketball game that night. So there was a lot going on. So before the concert, Jonelle and her dad went to McDonald's, and then he dropped her off at the bank because he had already told Jennifer he would watch her basketball game.
Yeah, I was going to say, what's that dad got to be in 2 places at one time?
Right. But it was okay. I don't know if he chose to do this because of it or not, but he went to the basketball game, and the concert was being broadcast on the local cable vision show. So he was going to watch the recorded version of it. So he dropped her off. He went on to the high school to watch Jennifer play in the basketball game. And after the concert around 8:15 p.m., her friend Deanna Ross and Deanna's dad gave Jonelle a ride home. They dropped her off around 8:15 p.m. at her house. And no one was home because mom was out of town. Dad was at the basketball game. So Jonelle and Deanna had kind of talked on the ride from the concert and said, like, how are we going to know that you're inside and okay? Like, I want to know that you get in safely and you're okay. And so they devised a plan that when Jonelle went in, she would flick the light on and off a few times so
Smart.
that Deanna and her dad knew, all good, you can go home.
Also, was that Deanna's thought to like say, how do we know you got in okay? Because that's pretty smart for a 12-year-old.
Apparently that was something that
Cool.
Deanna and Jonelle were talking about. Yeah. And Deanna later said, my dad waited until he saw her flick on the light. That was our sign that she made it inside and everything's fine. So we left. So at 8:30 p.m., shortly after Jonelle had arrived home, the phone rang. She answered it, and it was a call for her dad from a teacher at his school calling to say she wasn't feeling well. She needed a sub for the next day. And the next day was actually the last day of school before winter break. So Jonelle took a message, and it kind of reminded her that she had made a bunch of homemade gifts for her friends, and she was super excited to go and pass them all out. Unfortunately, little did that teacher know at the time, but she would be the last person to ever speak to Jonelle, and Jonelle would never get the chance to pass out her handmade Christmas gifts.
I wonder what the handmade Christmas gifts were.
I think they were some type of basket weaving for some reason. I think I read that. So around 9:30 p.m., Jonelle's dad arrived home from the basketball game.
Was Jennifer with him?
No.
Okay.
She stayed a little bit later at the school.
Mm-hmm.
He noticed that the garage door was open, but didn't think anything of it because Jonelle often forgot to close the garage door. They lived in a small community.
She was
very
12.
safe. Didn't think anything of it. So he walked in, called out, "Hi, Jonelle." He didn't get a response. He thought, okay. So he looked around and thought maybe she went to a friend's house if she's not home. He couldn't find a note from her though, which he expected. Apparently they had good communication about like if she was there by herself, I'm going out, and she would
No
leave
one
a
had
note.
cell phones.
No
so
cell
people
phones.
communicated in these different ways.
Exactly. So he couldn't find a note from Jonelle except for the phone message about the teacher needing a sub. But he did see signs of Jonelle's presence everywhere. Her shoes were on the floor. Her shawl was thrown off near this. There was a space heater apparently in the family room where she loved to sit and watch TV. The TV was on. The lights were on. She had worn pantyhose to the concert, and she took those off and kind of flung them over the couch. It was kind of like she was there, but she wasn't there. Around 10 o'clock, Jonelle's sister, Jennifer, got home. And Jim was at this point starting to get worried. But he was hoping that Jennifer might know where Jonelle was. Unfortunately, she did not. And at this point, both Jennifer and Jim are thinking, like, where could Jonelle have gone? There's snow outside. Her shoes are here. They have no idea. She was obviously at the house at one moment, at some point.
Right.
So Jim was officially now worried. He decided to call their pastor and friend, James Christie. He called him. He explained the situation. He said, what should I do? So the pastor said, check with the friends, make sure that they did drop her off, which feels like her shoes are there. She was obviously there.
Well, someone dropped her off, but also, like, in this case, that's not a crazy thing. Make sure they're the ones that dropped her off.
That's true. So he said, call her friends, make sure that, they dropped her off, and then call the police. So he did both of these things. He confirmed that Jonelle had, in fact, been dropped off after the concert by Deanna at 8:30, and that no one had seen or heard from her since then. So then Jim called the police. The police arrived around 10:15 quickly and immediately began investigating in and around the Matthews home, looking for any kind of signs of something. There was no signs of a struggle, no forced entry. The only clue that they were able to find that night were footprints in the snow that were leading up to one of the downstairs windows. So it kind of seemed as though someone had walked up and was looking in the window, which, would be a weird thing to do at your own home. So you have to assume that's somebody else.
I do.
And then it also looked like someone had tried to eliminate those footprints, like hide them with a garden rake. And I don't know if the rake was nearby that window or if it was put back somewhere different in the garage, but Jim Matthews had said that rake came right out of my garage.
Well, that's what I was going to say. The garage was open.
Yep.
Unless the person, person came with a rake, it probably came out of the garage.
Yeah, exactly. But other than that, there were no clues, literally nothing. And again, we're in 1984. DNA is not a thing. There were no witnesses. At this point, no fingerprints and no tire tracks. So it was just footprints. That's it.
Don't miss what happens next in today's episode. We'll be right back after a short message from our sponsors.
At midnight, Gloria had arrived in California finally, and she called to let Jim know that she had arrived safely.
I was wondering, like, at what point are they going to let mom know? Because there's a balance, right? Like, it's not been too long,
right?
Where you want to freak her out, but also at some point you got to tell her.
So she's been missing now for, presumably since around 8:30, 9 o'clock. So 3-ish hours. And
that's a long time, I imagine,
for a 12-year-old.
if you have a kid, any age, really. I mean,
yep.
Yeah.
So Jim answered the phone and said, Gloria, I don't know how to tell you this, but Jonelle isn't home and she's nowhere to be found.
Okay, my first reaction as a woman, or as a human, I guess, I don't mean that gendered, but yeah, as a woman, let me say that, is, oh my God, I leave for the first time in forever. I don't know if it was, but like, and you've suddenly lost our child.
Yeah.
I know it's not his fault.
Of course.
But like, right?
Well, as far as we know now.
Well, right now, I don't know, but well,
yeah.
Did that give anything away, what you just said? Okay. Well, don't say that either. Cut all that part.
Okay.
But my first thought is like, yeah, I go to do a good deed and visit my parents. I'd probably rather be home. I love my parents, but I want to be home.
Right.
I don't leave that often. And you've lost our kid. Oh, Maybe she's not as bitchy as me and didn't react like that.
She didn't. She reacted by just being terrified all
Yeah,
night,
that
crying all
makes
night, and
sense.
trying to find a flight home. And she flew home the next morning.
I was going to say she must have come home soon.
Yes, immediately she flew home.
Ugh.
So the investigation into Jonelle's disappearance began immediately and involved every possible angle and method to find clues as to her whereabouts that the Greeley police and the family and friends had available to them. So they immediately brought bloodhounds out to sniff the property, see if they could find anything. They used helicopters to scour kind of the surrounding areas around the house. Jonelle's picture was plastered everywhere throughout the town.
Because it's a teeny city or a big town, right? So
Right.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, of course it makes sense, period. But they could probably kind of pepper that city, town, whatever with posters pretty quickly.
Yes, and they did. And it's interesting because Jonelle became one of the first missing children whose photo appeared on milk cartons across America. Isn't that interesting?
That is.
I think prior to this, there was
one other at least, right?
There
I feel like
was.
there was a Lifetime movie I've seen on that.
3
The girl
weeks.
that got lost in the mall?
I don't know about that, but I know that 3 weeks before Jonelle went missing, a child in Florida went missing. And so, not that these had anything to do with each other,
Right.
but
the milk carton is what they have to do with each other.
Right, exactly. Peter Jennings aired the school choir video and a picture of Jonelle. Friends of the Matthews created a Rescue Jonelle committee. Deanna's dad actually said there were several of us. We took the whole county. We had a map and we just made quadrants. We had tons of people who wanted to help. We had the whole community pitch in saying, I want to help. What can I do? So they kind of split the whole entire county into these different sections and assigned people sections to go walking through and then also putting up flyers in. And at one point, the family, I believe not long after she went missing, even went on Geraldo to tell their story.
Rivera?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. He was big then. Yeah, 84.
Yeah. As the news of Jonelle's disappearance spread throughout Greeley, the town quickly shifted from a place where people left their doors unlocked, kids played outside freely, to a town that was now gripped with fear and anxiety. A retired Greeley Tribune police reporter, Mike Peters, remembers that time and said, before then, kids would walk to school and walk home. But afterwards, all of us started taking our kids to school and picking them up because we didn't know where Jonelle was or why she disappeared. Another woman who lived in Jonelle's neighborhood, Diane Duval, said, we were terrified. She had a 1-year-old, and she said it changed the town. It made everyone paranoid. So Jonelle's family had talked about how Christmas was strange that year, obviously.
I bet.
Because this Jonelle disappeared on December 20th.
Christmas, I imagine, wasn't Christmas for that family.
It was not like any other Christmas, obviously, but they tried to, they still had another daughter, and they tried to, they believed, right now, they believe that Jonelle is coming home. They will find her. Someone will find her. So for Christmas dinner, Gloria, this is so sad, set a place at the table for Jonelle because she thought maybe today will be the day that she comes home. And there were so many presents under the tree for Jonelle. And Gloria remembered that one of those presents was a Cabbage Patch doll. And she had to stand in line for hours for that Cabbage Patch doll, which kind of takes me back to, I don't think this happens anymore. I don't know. I don't have kids. But remember, like, every year there's some toy that is like the toy.
Yeah.
Like there's movies made about that.
Yeah, it doesn't really happen anymore. I think there is like a hot toy, but you buy it on the internet.
Right. So it's not, people aren't standing in line waiting to get it.
Right.
But back in the 80s, I think every year there was some kind of hot toy.
Into the 90s.
And probably, into the 90s. And so that year it was Cabbage Patch dolls. So she waited in line for hours for that Cabbage Patch doll, and it was just sitting under the tree waiting there for Jonelle, but there was no Jonelle.
Yeah. I wonder how long she had that Cabbage Patch Kid or kept it, hoping, yearning. Oh, that's sad.
Yes.
That is sad.
It is sad.
I just made myself really sad by saying it that way. Gosh.
So that night, a detective named John Gates was the third detective on the scene. He remembers it was a freezing cold night, and he said, quote, "It was all hands on deck. The minute I walked into their home, I thought that this was probably not a runaway. We walked the neighborhood. It was dark. We knocked on doors. Nobody in that neighborhood had seen anything. It wasn't long before we all started thinking that this was probably not going to end well." But other detectives in the early days of Jonelle's disappearance believed that maybe she did run away. So they went to the school, they talked to her classmates, they searched through lockers. They were looking for any type of evidence that might indicate that she would want to run away.
Right. That's what I was going to ask. Like, okay, that's always an option or a thought. Sure. And also then the next thought is, well, is there a reason why? My first thought was, did she want to go find her birth parents?
Oh, that's a great thought. I didn't see anything that said that, but that's actually seems kind of like a very...
Well, I'm guessing she didn't run away. I don't know, but...
she did not. The theory was quickly killed as investigators found no indication of any problems at home, no issues with her family. Plus, this, the actual crime scene, if you can call it that, there was really no evidence, but it told them that Jonelle was home and comfortable. She kicked off her shoes. She had the TV on. She turned her space heater on.
She took her pantyhose off.
That's like her pantyhose off.
You're taking your bra off when you get home.
Exactly.
You're getting comfortable.
And her sister Jennifer had said, Jonelle was dramatic. If she'd run away, she would have left a note to let everyone know how upset she was.
Yeah, that's good. That's actually a really helpful thing to note, honestly.
And apparently another detective had said, unfortunately, in this case, I don't think she's a runaway, because most runaways who are at this age, like this young, 12 years old, if they do run away, they come back within a few days.
Yeah. And how many days are we, though?
Several days after at this point.
I don't know what several means.
About
like 3?
We're in the first week of her disappearance.
Okay, yeah.
So,
because a 13-year-old, a 12-year-old can't function on their own.
Of course
independently.
Not. Right. So the investigators, as they're continuing to look for Jonelle, they're also looking for a suspect, because now they're thinking not a runaway. So someone else is involved. There is something kind of nefarious happening here. But because there was almost zero evidence outside of footprints in the snow, which they couldn't even officially connect to this.
They couldn't tell what kind of shoe it was?
They couldn't tell what kind of shoe it was because they had raked over it with that rake.
Right.
So they could see the footprints. They couldn't tell much from the footprints. And, maybe it was Jonelle the day before. Like, there was no way to concrete.
Or anyone. Yeah. Like the dad who was going to go in the backyard and do this and whatever.
There was no way to concretely connect these footprints to her disappearance. So one of the first initial suspects that investigators looked at was Jonelle's father. Yeah.
Well, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, even if there's no reason, you look at, it's interesting,
the people closest.
If a woman or a female goes missing, they look at the men in their lives. I guess statistically.
Statistically, it is.
Well,
more often than not, it is a significant other.
I mean, that's not her significant other, but it's a male counterpart that's close, a familial person.
Male person, yep. Yeah. And Jim wasn't even bothered by it. He understood that they have to look at everyone, and he was one of the closest men in her life to her. And
imagine the closest.
Right. And so they're going to look to him. So he understood that. He agreed to take a lie detector test with an FBI agent who was known as kind of the... I didn't write it down. This agent was known kind of as the best lie detector giver. I know that's not the correct word. Administrator. west of the Mississippi is what Jim had said. So this is like an intense guy. And he said, great, yes, give me the lie detector test. But he failed. This FBI agent said that he failed the lie detector test. And Jim said, quote, listen, I'm telling you the truth. I'm telling you everything I know. So they had him take another lie detector test.
Same person administered it?
Local police this time. And
well, that's interesting. They okay, not should have, but in my mind,
same person, right?
Same person.
Consistency.
Kind of like when we took our blood pressure. Same thing.
Oh, I have
same
blood pressure
equipment. Yeah, I don't want to take it.
Yeah. And this is when Jim kind of starts losing it. He said, listen, I've been very honest. I've been accessible to you at any time you wanted, but I'm getting sick of this because I am innocent. And he was right. They eventually found him to be innocent. They were able to, what's the word I'm looking for? They were able to confirm that he was at Jennifer's basketball game.
Alibi?
Yeah, his alibi. He was at the basketball game the whole night.
Yeah.
When the timeline of Jonelle going missing happened,
yeah,
he was in a gymnasium with tons of other people.
See, and his alibi would have been way easier verified, obviously, in this day and age, because there's cameras everywhere.
Right. Oh, good point. Yeah.
Like there's cameras in the gymnasiums these days.
And back then you're just relying on like witness testimony.
Right. I also don't think they call them gymnasiums. Well, maybe they do.
What do you call it? Like what
I
would
don't
you
know.
call
I haven't called them any. Yeah, I guess it's still a gym. A gym. It's still same. Okay. Anyways.
So this disappearance gained widespread attention, obviously not only in Greeley, but across the country, especially after President Ronald Reagan talked about Jonelle's specific disappearance during a press briefing in 1985. He urged the media to highlight stories of missing children more and was wanting to put more of a focus on missing children because several children had gone missing in a short period of time, not connected to each other, but it was becoming more of a kind of nationwide problem.
Well, I think also, I'm sure to some extent it was not always around, but had been happening. But also once one thing gets publicized, another one, sure, copycats, but that's not what I mean. Like it just once one kind of like school shootings.
Yep.
Yes, there are copycats, but also once it becomes
A thing.
a news thing, they'll get
They
publicized.
focus on it.
And plus, this is when the milk carton stuff came up.
Right. Milk cartons are just starting. Media. I mean, 1984, obviously, media and TV has been around for a long time at this point, but you have to assume that everything is
ramping up.
Thank you. Unfortunately, even though the President of the United States was talking about Jonelle's disappearance, she was on milk cartons. Everyone was looking for her. Without any kind of solid evidence, without any suspects or any trace of Jonelle after that night, there was only one possible outcome that kind of remained at this point.
She was dead.
The case went cold.
Oh. Whoops. Well,
yeah.
Could be same.
Same. Yeah, the case went cold for a very long time.
No, I imagine that doesn't mean that parents stopped looking in the
course
local community and they stopped talking about it. It just means like nationwide, it died down.
She wasn't in the media as much anymore. Eventually, her picture was not on milk cartons. Those flyers eventually came down. Yep. Because there was nothing it wasn't like
there
nothing,
wasn't a lead.
And then all of a sudden they found something.
Right.
Like there was nothing. She disappeared. There was no evidence, no witnesses, no suspects. And so at a certain point, her family, of course, didn't ever stop thinking or looking for her, but the police, the investigators,
they had to move on to other cases too.
Absolutely, exactly. So 10 years later.
What?
Yeah. Because there was nothing. Nothing happened.
I know. I was just surprised by that decade later.
Yeah,
so
a decade later.
92?
94.
94.
So despite a decade of police searching and investigating and ongoing public interest, Jonelle's case remained cold. But many people at this point are wondering, how is Jonelle's family handling this? Like, where are they at with this? And Jonelle's mom shared her story and how she felt with a writer who included this personal essay by Jonelle's mom, by Gloria, it was a local Chicken Soup for the Soul, but it was like a Chicken Soup for the Soul something in Colorado edition. And Jonelle's mom had said, people have asked me, how could you live day to day with a child missing? And all I can say is we clung to hope. I left lights on at night. I set a place for Jonelle at the table on Christmas Eve so she wouldn't feel left out if she returned unexpectedly.
Did she do that every year? I know you probably don't know, but like, that's lovely and also heartbreaking.
Yeah. She said, even as weeks turned into months, turned into years, we truly believed that Jonelle would be found. We were certain that at any minute she would walk through the door.
Does she?
Jonelle never did walk through that door. And on December 20th, 1994, 10 years after her disappearance, the family had a memorial service for Jonelle. According to Gloria, it was kind of their way of not only saying goodbye, but also saying to God, because they were church-going religious people, we're letting her go. She's now yours, is what Gloria said. And Greeley police chief at the time, Jerry Garner, said, it haunts all of us that have had anything to do with this case. This hung over this town for a long time.
Okay, I was just about to ask something, and I think you just answered it. This hung over the town for a long time. Because I was going to say, shit, did they never find who did it? But that somehow let me know they did. I hope so.
So as the years passed, life kind of moved forward without Jonelle, of course. Greeley underwent significant changes and expansion. Dirt roads, there was a lot of dirt roads in that town, dry fields. This was transformed into a network of paved, bustling streets, residential areas. The farmlands and valleys were, many of them turned into parks and pathways with other houses. And eventually Jonelle's family moved forward as well and relocated and moved out of Greeley.
Where'd they move?
It's really interesting. I found several articles that talked about when they moved. I know where they are today, and I'll get there. But I found several articles about them moving and leaving the area after her disappearance. And it looked like one of those court records, like it was redacted, like it was blacked out.
Well,
because
understandable.
Yeah.
They don't want people, they want privacy and solitude.
Yes.
I imagine. I don't know for sure.
And so I don't know exactly when they moved or where, but they did. And nothing changed. There was, for a very long time, nothing. For actually 34 years.
So what does that bring us to? Last year?
2018.
Okay. Yeah, I couldn't bother to do the math.
So in 2018, several of the detectives and officers who had been on this case or had come on to the case later, because in 1984, they kept this case open for a long time. And so a new officer would come on and it would get turned over to him or turned over to her.
And now we're talking 34 years. People retire, leave, get fired, of course. Yeah.
So a handful of officers, detectives, and investigators who were involved in this case, they went to a conference in Virginia for the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And they presented the Jonelle Matthews case to the FBI, to the Behavioral Analysis Unit. They presented it several times at this conference, and they collaborated with people from the FBI, from the Behavioral Analysis Unit, and were trying to come up with ideas as how to advance this case 30 plus years later.
I mean, I really have to commend the FBI or whatever, whoever, like that they don't, I know they probably do give up on some cases, but like
this one, they weren't. I mean, 34, certainly for some of that time, of course, this was not at the forefront.
Not their tippy top focus. Right. I understand that. But
sure.
Like they come back around. Now, I also have a lot of thoughts, but I'll hold them till later.
Okay. So the insights, one of the officers, last name Cash, verified that the insights that they gathered during these meetings over those days at this conference were really helpful in progressing this case, kind of reopening it and putting more focus on it after so long.
Spreading the word too.
Right.
To people in, I imagine, different jurisdictions and different bureaus.
Sure. Yeah, that's right. He was not at the time willing to elaborate on the specific kind of methods or approaches that they were going to use to move this case forward. But what he did share was video footage and images captured the night that Jonelle went missing. So those were now shared with the public. They never had been before. Video of the choir concert, images taken after the choir concert at the bank, video of the audience, the people who were there. And those had never been shared before. So the police put this out to the public kind of as a way to shake the trees for new information. They were hoping it would trigger something in someone who would come forward. In addition to this footage that they released, a dedicated team of investigators who were new, who had not been on this case 30 years prior, began meticulously reviewing every piece of evidence. They went back to conduct new interviews with people that had been interviewed 30 years prior, anyone who was still alive or
Also,
around.
there's new technology.
Absolutely. And they hoped to you're right on point with that, because they were really hoping to utilize kind of advances in scientific testing and forensics that were not previously available. But unfortunately, they didn't have a body.
There wasn't any tangible thing to apply to the new technology.
Exactly. There was simply not enough DNA from anyone, from Jonelle, from no one. They had nothing really from that scene.
Right. They had her pantyhose and this and that, but those were her pantyhose that she took off. Yeah. Like none of it.
They had nothing to compare it to. They had no suspects. And so Cash had said there's no full DNA sample for anyone other than Jonelle that they took from her clothes and things like that. So there's no suspect. So there's nothing we can test it against. And he said, unfortunately, genetics would be very, very helpful, but only if we had a body. So as a result of this kind of reinvigorated investigation, they had a new outlook on potential suspects. So they stated at this time that individuals in the community and neighboring areas they thought might possess information that they hadn't disclosed, that they didn't want to come forward with. So police are kind of looking into people who lived in and around that neighborhood at the time. Again, they said, quote, "We have reason to believe that an individual with direct knowledge of Jonelle's disappearance may have resided in the community and or surrounding area at the time. Maybe they are even still residing within the community." They said, "We also believe that this individual likely knew Jonelle and had previously interacted with her." Because remember, there was no forced entry. So
it wasn't likely a burglary or a home invasion to steal shit.
If somebody took Jonelle, you have to assume she opened the door, let them in, or if they came in.
She could have let in a stranger, but still, I understand how they're deducing to this. And I think it's a good idea because 34 years ago, maybe whoever knew something was terrified. And now that person, I don't know if this is even going to pan out, but now that person's
willing to come forward.
Well, older and what are they going to do now?
Mm-hmm.
Also, her parents are still living at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
The police also said that someone who knows details about her disappearance may have displayed unusual behavior in the days and weeks following her disappearance. And so they were asking people to think about their family, friends, coworkers at the time in that area, and if they had recognized any signs of stress, depression, anxiety, changes in alcohol or drug use, lack of interest in their events and things happening in life, alterations to appearance. And with fresh eyes on this case, the police began inquiring about a man who lived in Idaho that they now decided was a person of interest. You don't want to miss what happens next in today's murder story, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after a short message from our sponsors. The fresh eyes that were on this case focused on a man in Idaho that they now believed was a person of interest. He was a man who had told the Colorado Sun stories of a grave digger that was related to Jonelle's body. He talked to people about knowing the last person to see Jonelle alive. He talked about being involved in a rape. He is a man who had periodically and repeatedly inserted himself into Jonelle's investigation. But he was someone that police had really never paid much attention to because they kind of just took him as a true crime junkie who was looking to, oh, I know this and I know that. Nothing that he ever had said really panned out. And so police really never paid attention.
Had he ever met or interacted with Jonelle?
Police didn't know because now we're, 34 years later, we have an entirely new group of investigators and police looking at this. And at the time, 34 years prior, police hadn't thought of this man as anything.
So Jonelle would have been 46.
Yeah. Yep. She would have been 46. Yes.
Wow. I almost wanted to make a joke about your age, but it's not the time.
Thank you. So there was record of his kind of inserting himself into this investigation years before when she first disappeared, but no one thought anything of it. They were looking for someone.
He seemed harmless, it sounds.
Thank you.
He seemed harmless and a
you.
little bit
Yes.
wonky.
Exactly.
Like
erratic.
Kind of like a little,
Yep.
let me make my opinion known. And also, okay, we'll hear you and goodbye.
Yes. However, now 34 years later, the new police officers and investigators are suspicious of him. They have gone back through every piece of evidence ever, everything they could find. And they now are wondering who this man, like they know his name, where is he, and we need to talk to him. But before they could do that, at 4:50 p.m. on Tuesday, July 23rd, 2019, excavators installing a pipeline discovered human remains in a field southeast of Greeley, about 15 miles from where Jonelle formerly lived.
That's Mark's birthday.
I know.
There's a lot of bad shit happening on Mark's birthday.
I know.
Okay, cut that though.
It's
true.
DNA tests quickly confirmed that this was Jonelle Matthews' body. In addition to the DNA test, they found in the shallow grave where these bones were found scraps of tattered fabric. It was what was left of what she was wearing to that Christmas concert: a red blouse, a dark blue sweater, vest, and a skirt.
Oh, it was like the chorus outfit.
Yeah.
Oh.
And I've seen the video of her singing in that choir. I'll have to see if I can try and post it. It was eventually determined that she had died from a single bullet wound in the upper left portion of her skull. So straight through her forehead, basically. So Jonelle's family was obviously very sad, I'm sure, to find this out, but also was able to finally bury their daughter after 34 years.
I can't imagine. It's got to be like, I have no idea, honestly, but it's got to be like a really weird amalgamation of feelings. And at least they have somewhere to land with it.
Can you imagine?
I can't imagine any of it, but I can't imagine never knowing.
That's true. I think that would absolutely be worse. But for 34 years, it gives me like a sick feeling in my gut to think about not knowing where if I didn't know where you were, or, mom, or some, like a loved one, even my dog, it would just haunt me. That's just, and I'm sorry, comparing a dog to a human, that's not a great thing.
I didn't make that hand movement about that. I just mean, yeah, you'd either choose to go on or you wouldn't. That's the thing.
Ugh.
They every day probably chose to go on, not
to continue living, but
I'm sure at times they didn't want to.
And I can only imagine how much that would change you. But Jennifer, her sister, said, "I'm grateful for this closure after 34 years. It does bring up some old wounds and some more questions, maybe about what happened, but we've received a lot of love and support, and this is closure.
Okay, so who did it?
While Jonelle's family had some closure, the discovery of Jonelle's body did raise new questions for the police. Specifically, who killed her? And it turned out that police had a pretty good idea of who they thought killed her, and his name was Stephen Pankey. At the time of her disappearance, Pankey was 33 and lived about 2 miles away from the Matthews. He worked as a used car salesman, and 5 years after her disappearance, he moved his family to Idaho in 1989.
So he had a family.
He was married. He had a child. He had one child at the time of her disappearance. Later, he had another child. And when he moved to Idaho, he made a political name for himself. He ran twice for governor of Idaho as a Constitution Party candidate in 2014 and as a Republican in 2018. He also, I don't know if it's called running, but he applied or tried to become sheriff in the town that he was living in, Twin Falls.
Twin Falls, Idaho?
Mm-hmm.
Oh. I don't know. That means nothing to me. It just
Me either.
sounds like a cool place.
I agree.
I mean, not based on who was the sheriff or ran for sheriff. But.
Right. He never became sheriff. According to police, Stephen Pankey had been someone that they were interested in for several years, since 2018 when they reopened this. And as they were going back through all the records and all the files and everything on Jonelle's case, they realized that starting from 1985, Pankey had made numerous contacts with the police, FBI, and media outlets, claiming to have information about the crime. At one point, he went to the police and said, I would like immunity, but then I'll tell you a bunch of details because I know details about the case. He deliberately inserted himself into this investigation.
Do you think he did that because he was fearful that he would get caught? So demanding, and I don't really know how that works, but let's say they gave him quote unquote immunity. Was he trying to protect himself out of fear? Or maybe he was just, I don't mean like a narcissist, but like, wanted to talk about what he did without talking about what he did.
I'm shaking my head yes to all of that because I love where your brain's going, but I can't.
Yeah, it's just my thoughts. I know you don't have the answer, or I assume you don't.
But I like that because I think once you find out the rest of this,
it
will be interesting for you to hear that. So, so he kind of deliberately inserted himself in this case, and he was trying to provide information, but it kind of it was inconsistent and sometimes kind of incriminating, but no one really took him seriously back then. Because I think what you said is perfect. He seemed harmless. He seemed like he just wanted to be part of the action and that he really didn't know anything.
And sometimes, what do they say? Whoever they are, the clues are like right in front of your face, essentially. Yeah. I know that's not the phrase, but something like that.
Like hiding in plain sight.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah. So he said that back when this happened, he said on December 27th, 1984, so a week after she went missing, he told police that his estranged father-in-law, who was a gravedigger, called Pankey and said, something weird's happening, and somebody came up to me and asked for a body to be buried. And then Pankey never heard anything from his father-in-law again. He had since died, so at this point he was dead. And Pankey was so worried about that conversation at the time that he called the FBI and told them about it. He said, my attorney told me that I should tell you that my father-in-law is a gravedigger and somebody wanted to bury a body and asked him to help. The FBI was kind of like, what? At the time, they did not go deeper into that.
It was Stephen who asked his father-in-law to bury a body?
Yeah.
Yeah, duh. I mean, not duh, but like duh right now.
He also contacted the Fort Collins FBI office at one point and said, I want to talk to you. It may or may not have something to do with the Jonelle Matthews case. He also, in these many different times that he had contacted, he called, he sent letters throughout over the years. At one point, he had told the police I know that a rake was used on the night of her abduction to conceal the footprints. Now, this detail had never been released to the public, ever. Never was. He also had...
Wait. Like, I get that this guy seemed a little cuckoo.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know about... Well, yeah, this was just a handful of years ago. So I was going to say, I don't know about back then. But nowadays, I know that a lot of people will call... Things are publicized, so anyone can call and say anything. But also, if there's a piece that wasn't...
This was years later, though.
Right. That's what I'm saying. This was 2018 when shit gets publicized.
Right.
And this was a piece of information that wasn't publicized.
It was never publicized.
That's why I'm saying, why did no one's ears perk up and say, okay, we thought he was a crazy person. He still may, excuse my language, but he still may be.
Because it was years after it happened. The rake comment that he made wasn't back then, and it wasn't there. I have no date for that. I believe it was somewhere in between these 34
maybe
years.
It had been publicized
kind of
or something.
No, it hadn't. It never
right.
was.
Okay, so that's my point.
Right, but it fell on deaf ears at the point when he was sending handwritten letters.
You're missing my point.
Okay,
the piece of information, the rake, had not been publicized. Whether
right.
I understand it was somewhere between 34 years ago and 2018.
So the
maybe I'm missing the point.
No, the new people who are investigating that, who came across the letter, one of the many letters he wrote identifying the rake. Now in 2018, they're like, what the fuck? This was never publicized.
I see. Thank you. So we're actually saying the same thing, but you're saying the new people recognized, hello, he couldn't have known about that.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
You can probably cut that a lot shorter.
Well, no, it's fine because it is confusing and this is one of those cases where I went through tons and tons and tons.
Let's finish it. We got to watch the thing.
Okay.
I'll finish it. I'm going to turn into a pumpkin.
So that was a big clue to these new investigators that this man is a person of interest. He had also at one point sent a letter to a judge, I believe, a list of people of interest. And he listed some of the local police officers and he listed himself on this list. Again, over the years, this case went on for so long, people just ignored all of this very crucial information.
Which, to some extent, at least initially, I get if they labeled... I don't get it, but I get that happens.
Sure.
But it sounds like he kept coming around. At some point, let's just look a little bit deeper so we could fully rule it out.
He kept coming around. And at the time, back in 1984, 85, 86, he was exhibiting a lot of strange behavior, they later found out. In 1985, he became very upset that a preacher at their local church kept saying, Jonelle will return home unharmed. The preacher kept saying this to his congregation, I guess is what you call it. And Pankey became so upset about it when he was in that congregation. He kept saying, you're a false prophet. You're a false prophet. He was so irate that he had to be removed from the church at the time. Yep.
I mean, I can't even.
I know. It seems a little weird that nobody looked more into him at the time.
Maybe it's the thing of
that was in 1985.
They were, I mean, I'm not trying to make excuses, but sometimes that phrase comes out of somewhere, right? Say it again.
You're hiding in plain sight.
Hiding in plain sight.
Yeah.
And also, yeah, like I think about you're too close to it, or this could speak to we label people as something,
and that's it. You just hit it, yeah. Because he was known around town as kind of being the cranky, erratic, just angry old man,
which he was.
Yes.
And
he got into arguments with people in public. The police were called one time because he was arguing with a bank teller. And so the police had to come in. Now, this is not your run of the mill kind of cranky old man stuff, but back in 1973, he had been accused of rape. He was later cleared. But this is all just kind of to paint a picture of who this Stephen Pankey was.
Well, and perhaps how he was labeled as whatever.
Yes, just kind of like the town, like irritable
he wants
guy.
To be in shit, but
Yes. Yes.
He's essentially harmless, annoying. He stirs shit up, maybe.
That's exactly right. No, that's exactly right. He wants to insert himself into everything, and he's also just kind of angry at everyone and the
Let's
town.
deal with him.
Yeah. So a man named Kevin Schneider later said that he met the Pankey family when they first moved to Idaho. His son was friends with Pankey's son, Mark. And in an interview later on, the interviewer said, "Did your son ever see any unusual things at the Pankey house when he was over there?" And Kevin Schneider said, "Yes, he did. One time, I guess their family dog was doing a lot of barking and it was irritating Stephen. So he took duct tape and just wrapped it around the dog's muzzle."
Oh,
Pankey denies ever doing that. So Kevin said Pankey's son, Mark, was so, this is weird to me. I don't have a lot of more information on it, but he said that Pankey's son, Mark, was so unhappy living at home with his dad, Stephen, that he moved in with Kevin Schneider and his family for about 6 years.
wait, and Kevin Schneider was what to
A neighbor,
Pankey?
a neighbor in Idaho.
Well, okay.
Their kids were friends.
Well, that's not crazy to me.
That he moved in with his friend's family for 6 years, I guess.
That means it was bad at home.
Yeah, Kevin Schneider said he just couldn't take his dad.
Something was bad. And I'm not saying anything in specific. It was chaotic, bad, terrible. His parents, whatever.
Sure. In 2001, Pankey's wife filed for divorce, and Pankey moved to Shoshone, Idaho, and soon after ran for sheriff of the town, and he did not become sheriff. We're going to flash forward to years later. On September 4th, 2019, authorities served Pankey with a search warrant stating that they had probable cause for him being involved in the kidnapping and killing of Jonelle. An armed SWAT team showed up at his condo in Idaho, searched his condo, seized all of his electronic devices, which they found a lot of things on.
But you said it was still circumstantial.
It is.
But I guess you can get a search warrant. They haven't charged him. Maybe you can't charge or
they have not charged him yet
convict on circumstantial, but you can get a search warrant.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they seized his electronics, his financial documents, numerous other items, including his 2 2019 Subarus, which they were later returned to him. And news.
It's good to know. We were worried about the Subarus. My head went to, what color were they? Don't answer that. Go on.
I don't know. News of this search was all over the media, but it was not the police who were talking to the media. It was Stephen Pankey himself. He was talking to anyone who would listen, including a CBS affiliate channel in Idaho. And he said in an interview with them soon after this search, "I've never met Jonelle Matthews. I've never even met anyone in her family. But make sure that the viewers hear that. And also, I voluntarily gave my DNA and I offered to take a polygraph." The police actually said they never asked him for DNA. They never got his DNA. And the Greeley police commander said that Pankey had made repeated efforts to speak with detectives over the years. But about a month prior to this search, 2 detectives went to where he was living in Idaho and knocked on his door and just wanted to talk to him, just get a feel for him. And he refused. He wouldn't speak to them. But for the previous 30 years, he couldn't keep himself out of this case. Hence the new, the search warrant that they got. And so after this search, and Pankey's talking to the press and talking to the media, and what he did next was so weird. He ran for sheriff again, saying how innocent he was, and he told local media he wanted to help others who had been falsely accused like himself.
But he hadn't been formally accused, or had he?
He had not been formally accused yet.
He'd been questioned.
And they had searched his home.
Also, to me, yes, this is all weird. And also, based on the little, I only know this part, the little you've shared, doesn't seem that weird of him. Right?
Yeah, that's true. He's an odd duck.
Right.
Yeah. He lost that sheriff's run.
Thank goodness. Then I think something about
Idaho.
Yeah.
On October 12th, 2020, Stephen Pankey was arrested and charged with Jonelle's kidnapping and murder. The indictment at the time of his arrest, it did not indicate a motive, but it did have some specifics saying that Pankey lived in the area at the time. He attended the same church as the Matthews family, and he was known, and witnesses said that he was known to watch middle school students as they walked home from Franklin Middle School, which is where Jonelle went, which is also, if I'm going to play devil's advocate, neither here nor there. He can watch people do whatever.
Right.
Sure.
That's not what he got indicted for, though.
Clearly. Pankey's trial began on Thursday, October 14th, 2021. And unfortunately, ultimately ended in a mistrial on November 4th due to a hung jury. The jury voted to convict Pankey only on a misdemeanor count of making false statements to police, but they could not come to a unanimous verdict on the kidnapping and murder charges. His defense said his interest in the case could be due to Asperger's, and maybe he has Asperger's.
That may be.
Maybe.
I thought something of the sort. I didn't even think severe mental health. He just, something's going on. Okay.
Yep.
That also doesn't
mean you're allowed to murder people.
Right.
Yeah. He was retried at the beginning of 2022. Him and his lawyer maintained his innocence. He claimed A, he didn't own a gun, and B, he had an alibi. He said him and his ex-wife were home that evening that Jonelle was disappeared, and they departed for a scheduled and planned Christmas vacation in California the next day. However,
do they have evidence of that scheduled and planned?
No. And when his ex-wife was interviewed, she disagreed. She said the trip wasn't planned. He told us randomly and out of nowhere, get ready, you're going out of town, pack your bags.
Which I bet his lawyer said, well, of course, they're in a divorce proceeding right now.
Exactly.
So of course she's not going to support him.
Exactly.
Oh my God, what happened?
She also mentioned upon their return from their trip, they did take that trip. Yeah. She said he began digging random holes in their yard. I don't understand that. And also around that time, a car on their property randomly, I'm saying that with air quotes, randomly caught fire and burned up and was taken away to a salvage yard. She also said that over the next few weeks, he became fixated on Jonelle's disappearance. He was constantly reading news articles, watching TV coverage. Whenever they were in the car together, he would ask her to read him articles about Jonelle's disappearance. On the stand, Pankey claimed that he inserted himself into the case because of this. He said, quote, "It was just me trying to be a big man. I just wanted to be in the case, okay? I really had no knowledge. It began as a series of lies, and it got bigger and bigger over the years. One lie leads to another. I just wanted to be in the spotlight."
Okay, so I don't know. I'm guessing he is not proven innocent, but I don't know. So okay, if that were true, I could hear that, see that, but I'm guessing that's not true. Was he convicted? Please tell me.
I'm going to tell you in the next 3 minutes.
Tell me.
So his lawyer said Stephen Pankey is a busybody. He gets into people's business. I'm not here to say that's a good quality, but that's who he is. He gets in the middle of things. And when it comes to these true crime situations, he's particularly interested and gets particularly involved. The prosecution said, there's no DNA evidence in this case. However, every statement that we're going to tell you and statements from the defendant himself will prove that he is the person we've been looking for 35 years. They downloaded data from his electronic devices showing that he conducted thousands of online searches on Jonelle. And a month after her body was discovered, he had searched and read a bunch of articles noting that there was no DNA evidence in the case. And several days later, he voluntarily picked up the phone, called the police, and said, "I'd like to give my DNA voluntarily to prove my innocence," after he knew there was no DNA in the case. October 2022, A jury in Colorado found Stephen D. Pankey guilty of second-degree kidnapping with use of a deadly weapon, felony murder, and false reporting to authorities. He was found not guilty on first-degree murder. Following the verdict, the judge gave him life in prison with a chance of parole after 20 years.
Okay, so I am having a problem with this because I don't hear why he was actually convicted. Because the thousands of searches on his internet, which obviously came a decade, 2 decades later, after the 80s, right? He was very involved. He liked to involve himself.
Mm-hmm. There is no physical evidence that connects him to this case.
I'm not saying he didn't do it, and probably he did. I don't know, actually. But that is questionable to me because he also, like you just said, he likes to insert himself. Obviously, over the decades, he got fixated on something. Whether he got fixated because he was the killer or got fixated because he had Asperger's.
Or any number of other reasons.
Whatever, right.
True crime fanatic, anything. And that is, and unfortunately.
Oh, now I feel unsettled.
I wonder if I should have told this in a different way, but now that's why this case was so, there's zero physical evidence.
Oh, I'm unsettled. We have to watch the thing.
There's nothing that connects him to this case it's all circumstantial.
Oh, I got to look up. Where is he right now?
Circumstantial. So he is, I found 2 different things. He's either housed at the Limon Correctional Facility in Colorado or the Bent County Correctional Facility in Colorado. He, either way, will be eligible for parole in 2040 when he is 91 years old, apparently. Jim and Gloria, Jonelle's parents, currently live in Costa Rica, from what I could find.
Nice.
And Jennifer is married, I believe, with children and lives in Washington.
Well, I'm going to ask you a question offline.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel unsettled. I don't mean I like that, but that's interesting. I've got a lot of questions.
I find it fascinating that they convicted him of murder. It wasn't first degree murder, but of murder at all with zero fingerprints, zero DNA, zero physical evidence. It's all just him being interested in the case. The only thing that kind of I feel like stands out is the knowing of the rake. But that is not enough to put someone away for murder for life, in my opinion. And I also, after researching this for days, I feel like he did do it, but there is a shadow of a doubt there. So that's it. That's that. That's our next.
Woof, guys.
Yeah.
Let that marinate in your brains.
Yes, that is our next Christmas case. We will be back with.
It's weird you're calling it a Christmas.
I know.
It's also I don't care. I don't think that means it's a jolly case.
No, it's clearly not.
It's a holiday season. That kind of timely year.
If we did not have to, if we weren't focusing on Southwest, there are a lot of very fascinating murders that occur around Christmas across the country and world, I'm sure, but across the country.
Well, I'm also certain that there are some fascinating murders across the country, and maybe not Southwest, but that happen in a Christmassy way. Get murdered under.
Oh my God!
I mean, that's awful, but get murdered under the mistletoe or
as Santa,
right?
There certainly are.
Yeah.
There certainly are. So we're
only doing Southwest. So
that's right. So we will.
Maybe there's a Hanukkah one or whatever.
Oh yeah. Today's Hanukkah, the first day of Hanukkah. Happy Hanukkah to all of our Jewish listeners and
our Jewish listeners.
That's right.
Happy Hanukkah. I was hoping I didn't put my voice out there quick enough that we'd make
potato pancakes.
Well, yeah, latkes. Michael and I looked at this whole menu and I was like, oh, let's do this. And then I was like, we're not going to do this.
That sounds
There's
fun.
Brisket, latkes, matzo ball soup.
Yum.
So I'm going to make something.
I love matzo ball
Excuse me, I can
soup.
say this. Jewy on Sunday. Probably matzo ball soup. Gefilte fish is not right now, I don't think.
It's Passover.
Yeah.
Why don't we make a Hanukkah dinner tomorrow? I know you said you were doing it Sunday, but we can make brisket.
We'll say why we aren't doing it tomorrow.
Okay.
Offline.
Oh, got it. All right, guys. Thank you for listening. we will be back with a bonus episode and a new case next week. That's all I got.
Got a lot of questions, but I'm hoping you guys are just going to let them go for now.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys. Thanks for listening.
Bye. Death by Southwest is hosted by Jenna Schneider and Margot Carmichael.
Executive produced by Margot Carmichael.
Produced by Jenna Schneider.
Audio editing and sound design by Margot Carmichael.
Music by Soundstripe.
And a special thanks to Edward R. Murrow for letting us borrow his famous sign-off phrase, good night and good luck.